The massive space station hung in the void like a crystal flower made of metal and light. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its many arms, bringing diplomats and traders from across the galaxy. Today was special. The humans were coming. Admiral Kethver stood at the observation deck, watching the human ship approach. It was smaller than most diplomatic vessels, sleek and dark. The humans called it the Star Runner. To his alien eyes, it looked more like a weapon than a transport. "They're different from what we expected," said Commander Zaylt, joining him at the window. The younger officer's blue skin showed nervous patterns of color. "Our scouts said humans were primitive, but look at that ship," Kethver nodded. The human vessel moved with purpose, its docking approach perfect. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Perhaps our scouts were wrong about many things. The docking bay filled with activity as the human ship settled into place. Zephyrian guards took their positions, though this was meant to be a peaceful meeting. The Empire had learned to be careful with new species. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The first human to step out was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and steady eyes. He wore simple dark clothes that somehow looked formal and practical at the same time. Behind him came three others, a woman with short blonde hair, a man in what looked like a military uniform, and another woman with red hair. "I am Jake Morrison," the tall man said, his voice calm and clear. "Earth's ambassador to the Zephyrian. Empire, this is Lisa Parker, our cultural attaché. Commander Ryan Bell, our military liaison. And Amy Carter, our trade negotiator." Admiral Kethver stepped forward. "Welcome to Station Prime. I am Admiral Kethver, military advisor to the Empire. The Council of Minds awaits your arrival." Jake Morrison smiled, but his eyes stayed sharp. "We're honored to be here. Earth looks forward to peaceful relations with your great empire." As they walked through the station's corridors, Kethver noticed how the humans moved. They walked in formation without seeming to think about it. Their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. When they passed a group of armed guards, the humans' positions shifted slightly, giving them better angles and cover. "Your station is impressive," Lisa Parker said, her voice warm and friendly. "The defensive positions are well planned. Multiple choke points, overlapping fields of fire. Very efficient." Commander Zaylt blinked in surprise. "You have knowledge of military architecture?" "Oh, just a hobby," Lisa replied with a smile. "I've always been interested in how different species approach security challenges." The group entered a large meeting room where the Council of Minds waited. 12 Zephyrian leaders sat around a curved table, their skin color shifting with emotion and thought. In the center sat High Counselor Vexron, the Empire's leader. "Humans of Earth," Vexron spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You come seeking alliance with our empire. Tell us, what does your species offer?" Jake Morrison took his seat across from the council. His team arranged themselves around him, their positions creating a small tactical formation, even in the peaceful setting. "We offer partnership," Jake said. "Earth has resources, knowledge, and skills that could benefit both our peoples. We've studied your history, your conflicts, your victories. We understand the challenges you face." "And what challenges do you think we face?" asked Counselor Nekthar, his skin showing skeptical orange patterns. Amy Carter leaned forward. "Outer Rim rebellions, for one. Your supply lines are stretched thin. The rebels know this and hit your convoys when they're most vulnerable. Cut off their resources, and they'll collapse within months." The council members exchanged glances. Their skin colors shifted to surprised blues and greens. "How do you know of our military operations?" Kethver asked. "Public records," Ryan Bell said simply. "Trade routes, shipping schedules, news reports. Put it together, and the pattern is clear. We're not trying to spy on you. We just notice things. High Counselor Vexron studied the humans carefully. You speak of our problems with great understanding. Do your people have experience with rebellions? Some, Jake admitted. Every growing civilization faces internal conflicts. It's how you handle them that matters. Lisa Parker nodded. The key is understanding why people rebel. Usually, it's not about resources or territory. It's about feeling ignored, unheard. Address the real problems, and the violence often stops. And if it doesn't? Counselor Nekthar asked. The humans exchanged quick glances. Something passed between them, some shared understanding. Then you do what you must, Jake said quietly. Sometimes peace requires hard choices. The meeting continued for hours. The humans answered every question with confidence and insight. They understood complex political situations, economic pressures, and military strategies. They spoke of war and peace with equal calm. When the formal session ended, Kethver walked with the humans to their quarters. Your people are remarkable, he said. You seem to understand our empire better than some species we've known for centuries. We're good students, Jake replied, and we've learned that the best way to make friends is to understand their problems. That night, after the humans had retired, the Council of Minds met in emergency session. Something troubles me, Vexron said to the gathered leaders. These humans know too much. They speak of military matters like experts, not diplomats. Perhaps their species is naturally strategic, suggested Counselor Nekthar. Kethver shook his head. I've fought in 100 battles, led campaigns across star systems. I recognize certain skills when I see them. These humans think like soldiers, like commanders. Are you saying they're military personnel? Commander Zelt asked. I'm saying they understand war better than most of my officers, Kethver replied. The question is, why would Earth send warriors disguised as diplomats? The council fell silent, considering the implications. Outside their meeting room, the human ship, Star Runner sat quietly in its docking bay, its dark hull reflecting the station's lights like a sleeping predator. Commander Zaleth couldn't sleep. The conversation with the human diplomats kept playing in his mind. He sat in his office, staring at the data screen in front of him. The human files were spread across his desk. Birth certificates, education, records, career histories. Something was wrong. He picked up Jake Morrison's file again. According to the records, Morrison was born in 2387 on Earth. He studied political science at Harvard University, graduated in 2409, then worked in various diplomatic positions before becoming an ambassador. But the math didn't add up. ZAEL, single quotes, pulled up the university records. Harvard University showed no record of a Jake Morrison graduating in 2409. In fact, the graduation records for that year were completely different. He cross-referenced with other Earth universities. Nothing. Computer, search for Jake Morrison. In Earth military databases, he commanded. Access denied. Earth military records are classified, the computer responded. That was strange. Most diplomatic personnel had some military record available, even if basic. Complete classification usually meant something important was being hidden. ZAEL, single quotes, tried. A different approach. He searched for news articles, public records, anything that might mention the human diplomats. Hours passed as he dug through databases from dozens of worlds. Then he found something. A news report from the Mars colony, dated 15 years ago. The headline read, Colonel Parker ends rebellion. Thousands surrender. The article included a photo of a military officer in Earth uniform. The face was older, harder, but unmistakably Lisa Parker. Computer, enhance image and compare to current diplomatic files. The computer hummed for a moment. Identity match confirmed. Subject is listed as Lisa Parker, cultural attach, Earth diplomatic mission. Zal's skin flashed bright orange with alarm. Lisa Parker wasn't a cultural attach. She was a military colonel who had crushed a rebellion on Mars. The article described her tactics as ruthlessly efficient and psychologically devastating. He searched for more information about the Mars rebellion. The details made his blood run cold. The rebels had held 3 major cities and controlled most of the planet's mining operations. Colonel Parker had ended the rebellion in 6 months without a single direct assault. Instead, she had used propaganda, turned rebel groups against each other, and slowly strangled their supply lines. The rebels had surrendered not because they were beaten in battle, but because they had been broken psychologically. She's not a diplomat, Zalth whispered to himself. She's a specialist in psychological warfare. He quickly searched for the other humans. Commander Ryan Bell's name appeared in connection with something called the Ghost Fleet. The records were fragmentary, but what he found was disturbing. Bell had apparently commanded a squadron of ships that had attacked 3 different colonial uprisings. The attacks had been so swift and devastating that the colonies had surrendered. Without knowing what had hit them, Amy Carter's name was even more troubling. She appeared in classified reports about the Europa blockade, where Earth forces had surrounded one of Jupiter's moons for 2 years. The blockade had been so complete that the separatist movement there had slowly starved. No shots had been fired, but thousands had died. Zalf's hands shook as he compiled his findings. These weren't diplomats. They were Earth's most experienced military commanders, specialists in crushing rebellions and breaking enemy morale. The next morning, he requested an urgent meeting with Admiral Kethfer. They met in a secure briefing room, away from listening devices. Sir, I've discovered something troubling about our human guests. Zalt H. began. Kethfer looked up from his reports. What did you find? They're not diplomats. They're military personnel, high-ranking officers with extensive combat experience. He presented his findings. Kethfer's expression grew darker with each revelation. Colonel Parker, the cultural attach, is actually a specialist in psychological warfare. She ended the Mars rebellion by breaking the rebels' will to fight. Commander Bell led something called the Ghost Fleet, which destroyed 3 colonial uprisings. Amy Carter orchestrated a blockade that starved an entire moon into surrender. Kethfer stood up, pacing the small room. And Jake Morrison? I'm still searching, but the pattern is clear. Earth hasn't sent us diplomats. They've sent us their most experienced military commanders. But why? Kethfer asked. What's their purpose? Before Zalf could answer, his communicator buzzed. Sir, the human delegation is requesting a meeting about the Outer Rim situation. They say they have suggestions for resolving the conflict. Kethfer and Zalf exchanged glances. The Outer Rim rebellions were the Empire's most sensitive military operation. How did the humans even know about them? Tell them we'll meet in an hour, Kethfer said. The meeting took place in the station's strategic planning center. The humans arrived exactly on time, carrying data tablets and looking professional. They seemed completely at ease in the military environment. We've been thinking about your Outer Rim problem, Jake Morrison began. The rebellions are spreading faster than you can contain them. That's classified information, Kethfer said carefully. Is it? Lisa Parker asked with a smile. Your supply convoys are being attacked regularly. Your patrol schedules are predictable. The rebels know your weaknesses. Amy Carter activated her tablet, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the Outer Rim. The problem isn't military. It's economic. The outer colonies feel exploited. They send resources to the core worlds, but receive little in return. How do you know this? Zalt H. demanded. It's a common pattern, Ryan Bell said. We've seen it before. The solution is to make the colonies feel like partners, not subjects. Jake Morrison leaned forward. But if you can't do that, there are other options. Cut their communication networks first. Isolated rebels can't coordinate, then target their leadership. Remove the key figures and the movement fragments. If they still resist, Lisa Parker added, you turn them against each other. Spread rumors, create distrust. Make them spend more time fighting each other than fighting you. The humans spoke with casual expertise about siege tactics, psychological operations, and insurgency suppression. They discussed breaking enemy morale and crushing resistance movements like they were talking about the weather. Cathvar realized with growing horror that these weren't suggestions. These were instructions from people who had done these things before. We should continue this discussion later, he said abruptly. Thank you for your insights. After the humans left, Cathvar turned to Zalt H. They're not just military personnel. They're specialists in crushing rebellions. And they're studying our weaknesses. What do we do? Zalth asked. We investigate further. If these are Earth's diplomats, what does that say about their real military? And more importantly, what are they really doing here? That night, Cathvar couldn't sleep either. He stood at his window, looking out at the human ship. The Star Runner sat in its docking bay, dark and silent. But now he wondered what other secrets it might be carrying. In the morning, he would contact the Empire's best intelligence officers. They needed to learn everything they could about these humans before it was too late. Because one thing was becoming clear. Earth hadn't sent diplomats to make friends. They had sent predators to study their prey. The surveillance device was so small that even Zalth's enhanced vision could barely see it. He carefully placed it in the ventilation system of the human quarters, his hands trembling slightly. If they caught him, it would cause a diplomatic incident. But after 3 days of investigation, he had to know the truth. Admiral Cathvar waited in the monitoring room, his skin dark with worry. Are you certain about this? We need to know who we're dealing with. Zalt H replied, adjusting the audio. Sensors. These humans are not what they claim to be. The device activated, and suddenly they could hear everything happening in the human quarters. For the first hour, there was nothing unusual. The humans discussed their meeting schedule, reviewed diplomatic protocols, and talked about food preferences. Then everything changed. Pass the coffee, would you, Reaper? Lisa Parker said casually. Morrison chuckled. Haven't heard that calcine in years. Here you go, Iron Maiden. Cathvar's skin flashed bright red. Did she just call him Reaper? And he called her Iron Maiden, Zalth whispered. Those sound like military calcines. The humans continued their conversation, unaware they were being monitored. Remember that mess on Titan? Ryan Bell asked. When the miners thought they could hold out against the Ghost Fleet? That was barely a warm-up, Amy Carter replied. The Europa blockade was more challenging. 2 years of psychological pressure before they broke. You always were patient with sieges, Jake said. Me, I preferred quick solutions. Remember the Ceres incident? How could I forget? You earned your nickname that day. 3,000 rebels surrendered after witnessing what you did to their leadership. Cathvar felt his blood turn to ice. These weren't diplomats reminiscing about their careers. These were military officers discussing past battles, past victories, past atrocities. Computer, search all available databases for the terms Reaper. 6. Iron Maiden, Ghost Fleet, and Ceres Incident, he commanded. Warning. Most results are classified at the highest levels. Available information is limited. Display what you can. The screen filled with fragments of reports, news articles, and intelligence briefings. The picture they painted was terrifying. The Ceres incident had been a massacre. 3,000 rebels had been killed in a single day by an Earth military unit commanded by someone with the calcine. Reaper 6. The official reports called it a strategic enforcement action, but witness accounts described systematic executions and psychological warfare. The Ghost Fleet had been an Earth Special Operations Unit that destroyed colonial uprisings across the outer solar system. Their tactics were so brutal that entire planets had surrendered rather than face them. Iron Maiden appeared in reports about the subjugation of 17 different worlds. The name was associated with psychological warfare, techniques that had driven entire populations to madness. "These aren't diplomats," Zalth said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're Earth's most dangerous war criminals." The surveillance device continued transmitting. The humans were still talking, their voices calm and friendly as they discussed acts of genocide and planetary suppression. "The trick with the Martians was making them think they were winning," Lisa Parker explained. "Let them take a few victories, build their confidence, then crush them when they overextended." The psychological impact was devastating. Classic strategy. Jake agreed. Give them hope, then take it away. Much more effective than simply overwhelming them with force. "Speaking of which," Ryan Bell said, "have you noticed the defensive weaknesses in this station? The power distribution system has 3 critical failure points. Take those out, and the entire station goes dark." "I saw that too," Amy Carter added. "And their fleet positioning is terrible. They're vulnerable to a coordinated strike from multiple vectors." Kethver realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just reminiscing. They were analyzing the Empire's defenses, identifying weaknesses, planning potential attacks. "We need to alert the High Council immediately," he said. But Zelt H. held up a hand. "Wait, there's more." Jake Morrison was speaking again. "The Zephyrians are impressive, but they think like prey species. They build defenses to keep enemies out, not to project power. It's a fundamental weakness." "Their psychology is interesting too," Lisa Parker observed. "They respond to authority and hierarchy, classic authoritarian society. That makes them predictable and exploitable," Ryan Bell added. "Create the right crisis, and they'll give up freedoms for security. Standard procedure. How long before we move to Phase 2? Amy Carter asked. "Another few months," Jake replied. "We need to map their entire fleet disposition first. And we still need intelligence on their core worlds." "The Council of Minds suspects something," Lisa warned. "That young officer, Zalth, has been asking questions." "Let him ask," Jake said with a cold smile. "By the time they figure out what we really are, it will be too late." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. The humans weren't just military personnel. They were conducting an intelligence operation, gathering information for what sounded like a planned invasion. "Computer, priority alert to High Council. Emergency session required immediately." Within an hour, the Council of Minds had assembled. In their most secure chamber, Kethvar presented his findings to the 12 leaders, their skin colors shifting through the spectrum as they processed the information. "Let me understand this correctly," High Counselor Vexron said slowly. "The humans we welcomed as diplomats are actually war criminals conducting intelligence gathering for an invasion?" "That's what the evidence suggests," Kethvar replied. "They're not here to make peace. They're here to study our weaknesses." "How many other species have they done this to?" Counselor Nekthar asked. "We don't know. But if this is their standard diplomatic procedure, they could be gathering intelligence across the entire galaxy." The council members exchanged worried glances. If the humans were conducting similar operations with other species, the implications were staggering. "What do we do?" asked Counselor Yekshe. "If we confront them, we reveal that we know their true purpose. If we don't confront them, they continue gathering intelligence," Kethver pointed out. "There's another problem," Zaltach added. "If these are their diplomats, what does that say about their actual military? If they send war criminals, As ambassadors, what kind of monsters do they keep as soldiers? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Empire had welcomed humanity as a potential ally, but now they realized they might be facing the most dangerous enemy in galactic history. We need more information, Vexron decided. Continue monitoring them, but carefully. And contact our intelligence network. I want to know everything about human military capabilities. And if we discover they're planning an invasion? Counselor Nekthar asked. Then we prepare for war, Vexran replied grimly. Because if these humans are willing to send their most dangerous criminals as diplomats, they're not interested in peace. As the council dispersed, Kethver remained behind with Zalt H. What troubles me most, he said quietly, is how calm they were. They discussed genocide and planetary subjugation like they were talking about the weather. It's worse than that, Zalth replied. They enjoyed it. You could hear it in their voices. They're not just killers. They're predators who enjoy the hunt. Outside the council chamber, the human delegation continued their diplomatic mission, unaware that their cover had been blown. But they wouldn't remain unaware for long. And when they realized the Empire knew their true identity, the real game would begin. The emergency meeting of the Empire's top military leaders took place in the deepest level of Station Prime, in a room that had been built to withstand direct nuclear strikes. Admiral Kethver stood before a holographic display showing human diplomatic missions across the galaxy. This situation is worse than we thought, he began, his voice grim. Our intelligence network has confirmed that every human diplomatic mission follows the same pattern. The display showed dozens of star systems, each marked with a red dot where humans had established diplomatic contact. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Ambassador John Davis on Proxima Prime, Kethvar continued, was formerly General Davis, who led the suppression of the lunar colonies. Ambassador Sarah Wright on Kepler Station was Colonel Wright, architect of the asteroid belt. Pacification. Ambassador Robert Lee on Alpha Centauri was the butcher of the Outer Rim. General Vexmar, the Empire's chief of military intelligence, studied the data with growing alarm. They're not conducting diplomatic missions. They're conducting military reconnaissance on a galactic scale. That's exactly what they're doing, Kethver confirmed. And the most disturbing part is how successful they've been. Every species they've contacted has signed favorable agreements with Earth. Trade deals, military cooperation pacts, technology exchanges. Because they're not negotiating, Commander Zalt H. added. They're applying military psychology to civilian leaders. They identify weaknesses, exploit fears, and manipulate decision-making processes. The holographic display shifted to show a detailed analysis of human negotiation tactics. The patterns were identical across all their diplomatic missions. They always arrive in small groups, Kethver explained. Never more than 4 individuals. They present themselves as peaceful, reasonable, and knowledgeable. But every single one is a retired military officer with extensive combat experience. Look at this, General Vexmar pointed to a section of the analysis. They always request tours of military installations. They ask detailed questions about defensive capabilities. They study population centers, resource distribution, and communication networks. They're gathering intelligence for invasion planning, Zalth said flatly. Every diplomatic mission is actually a military survey. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just gathering intelligence on 1 or 2 species. They were mapping the military capabilities of the entire galaxy. What about our own situation? Asked Admiral Nexfer, commander of the Empire's home fleet. How much do they know about us? Kethver activated another display. They know everything. Our fleet positions, our defensive strategies, our supply lines, our political structure. In 3 weeks, they've learned more about the Empire than some of our enemies have discovered in decades. And they're still gathering information, Zalith added. Yesterday, Ambassador Morrison asked for a tour of our shipyards. Ambassador Parker requested cultural exchange programs that would give them access to our educational systems. They want to understand how we think, how we learn, how we make decisions. Why? General Vexmar asked. What's their endgame? Total domination, Kethver replied. They're not interested in conquest through direct military action. They're planning something much more sophisticated. He activated a new display showing human settlement patterns and resource allocation. Look at this. Every system where humans have established diplomatic relations has seen increased human migration, expanded trade agreements, and growing economic dependence on Earth. They're not invading, Zalte realized. They're integrating, making other species dependent on them economically, politically, and militarily. And once that dependence is established, Kethva continued, they can control entire civilizations without firing a shot. The species that resist face their military specialists, who have already mapped every weakness and vulnerability. They assembled officers studied the data with growing horror. The human strategy was brilliant in its simplicity and terrifying in its scope. We need to warn the other species, Admiral Nexver said. With what proof? General Vexmar asked. Everything we've discovered is classified intelligence. We can't reveal our sources without compromising our operations. And even if we could, Kethver added, who would believe us? The humans have been model diplomats. They've resolved conflicts, negotiated favorable agreements, and provided humanitarian aid. Their reputation across the galaxy is spotless. Because they're professionals, Zalth said bitterly. They understand that the best way to conquer an enemy is to make them trust you first. The discussion continued for hours, but no clear solution emerged. The Empire faced an impossible choice: maintain the diplomatic facade while secretly preparing for conflict, or expose the humans and risk galactic war. There's something else, Kethver said as the meeting neared its end. We've been monitoring their communications, and we've discovered references to something called the Integration Protocol. What is it? General Vexmar asked. We don't. No, but based on the context, it appears to be a multi-phase operation. They're currently in Phase 2, which involves detailed intelligence gathering and relationship building. And Phase 3? Admiral Nexver asked. We're not sure. But considering what we know about their methods, it's likely the transition from intelligence gathering to active control. The room fell silent again. The humans weren't just gathering intelligence. They were following a carefully planned strategy that would eventually give them control over the entire galaxy. We need to make a decision, High Counselor Vexron said from the doorway. He had been listening to the briefing, his skin dark with worry. Do we confront them or continue the pretense? If we confront them, Kethver warned, we reveal that. We know their true purpose. That might force them to accelerate their timeline. If we don't confront them, General Vexmar pointed out, they continue gathering intelligence and building their network across the galaxy. There's a third option, Zalth said quietly. We could eliminate them. The suggestion hung in the air like a death sentence. Killing diplomats, even false ones, would be an act of war. That would confirm their suspicions that we're a threat. Vexron said, and it would give Earth justification for military action. They're already planning military action, Zaltach replied. The question is whether we let them complete their preparations first. The debate continued, but no clear consensus emerged. The Empire's leaders faced a terrible choice. Risk war now, while they still had some advantages, or wait and hope they could find a way to counter the human strategy. I'll make the decision, Vexron said finally. We continue the diplomatic facade for now, but we also begin our own preparations. If the humans want to play a game of deception, we'll play along. And if they move to Phase 3? Kethver asked. Then we'll be ready for them, Vexran replied. They may think they're the only predators in the galaxy, but they're about to learn otherwise. As the meeting dispersed, the Empire's leaders began their own secret preparations. They would continue to smile and negotiate with the human diplomats, but they would also prepare for the war that seemed increasingly inevitable. The humans had made one crucial mistake. They had assumed that their enemies would remain ignorant of their true nature. But the Empire had discovered their secret, and now the game had changed. The question was, who would make the first move? 3 weeks had passed since the Empire discovered the truth about their human guests. The diplomatic meetings continued as scheduled, but now every word carried hidden meaning. Every gesture was analyzed for hostile intent. Jake Morrison sat across from the Council of Minds, discussing trade agreements with the same calm professionalism he had shown from the beginning. But now Admiral Kethver could see past the facade. The human's eyes constantly moved, cataloging exit points, assessing threats, calculating angles of attack. The mineral rights proposal is quite generous, Counselor Nekthar was saying. Earth offers very favorable terms. We believe in building long-term partnerships, Jake replied smoothly. When our friends prosper, we prosper. It's a simple philosophy. Lisa Parker nodded in agreement. Cultural exchange is equally important. We'd love to establish educational programs on your core worlds. Understanding each other's children is key to lasting peace. Kethver felt his skin crawl. The humans wanted access to Zephyrian children to study how the Empire's next generation thought and learned. It was preparation for long-term control. We'll consider your proposal, High Counselor Vexran said carefully. Such programs require extensive planning. Of course, Amy Carter said. We're patient. The best partnerships are built slowly, with trust and mutual understanding. The meeting continued for another hour, covering shipping routes, communication, protocols, and military cooperation. Every topic the humans raised would give them greater access to the Empire's infrastructure and secrets. After the humans left, Kethver remained behind with the Council. They're accelerating their timeline, he said quietly. The proposals they made today are more ambitious than anything they've suggested before. They're moving to Phase 3, Zaltach added. Active integration and control. Vexran's skin showed dark patterns of worry. Our intelligence network confirms that human diplomatic missions across the galaxy are making similar proposals. They're not just targeting us. How many species are involved? Counselor Nekthar asked. 47 confirmed diplomatic contacts, Kethver replied. And those are just the ones we know about. The actual number could be much higher. The scale of the human operation was staggering. While the galaxy had been celebrating humanity's arrival as a peaceful species, the humans had been systematically mapping and infiltrating every major civilization. Our military preparations are nearly complete, General Vexmar reported. Fleet positioning, defensive installations, communication networks. We're as ready as we can be. But are we ready for what's coming? Vexran asked. If these are their diplomats, what does that tell us about their actual military? It was the question that haunted every discussion. The humans had sent their most dangerous war criminals as ambassadors. What kind of monsters did they keep as soldiers? We've intercepted some intelligence about Earth's military structure, Kethver said. What we've learned is disturbing. The humans don't distinguish between military and civilian leadership. Their entire government is organized around what they call total war doctrine. Meaning? Counselor Nekthar asked. Meaning their entire society is a military machine. Their diplomats are military officers. Their trade negotiators are intelligence operatives. Their cultural attaches are psychological warfare specialists. Everything they do serves military objectives. The implications were terrifying. The Empire was dealing with a species that had turned war into an art form, where every aspect of society contributed to military dominance. There's something else, Zalth added. We've been monitoring their communications, and we've detected references to something called the final integration phase. What is it? Vexran asked. We're not certain, but the context suggests it's the endgame. The point where they stop, pretending to be partners and reveal themselves as conquerors. The room fell silent as the council contemplated the future. The humans were playing a game of galactic chess, and most of the other species didn't even know they were pieces on the board. We need to make a decision, Vexran said finally. Do we wait for them to make their move, or do we act first? Before anyone could answer, an urgent alert flashed on the chamber's communication system. Commander Zalt activated the display, and his skin immediately turned pale blue with shock. What is it? Kethfer demanded. Long-range sensors have detected a fleet movement, Zalt reported. Human ships moving toward the Outer Rim territories. The display showed a tactical map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human ship positions, and they were moving in coordinated formations toward multiple star systems. How many ships? General Vexmar asked. At least 300 confirmed vessels, Zalt replied. But these aren't the diplomatic ships we've been tracking. These are military vessels. They're moving to Phase 3, Kethfer realized. The integration phase is beginning. Vexran studied the display with growing alarm. Target destinations? The Calarian Empire, the Nexus Federation, and the Outer Colonies. All species that have recently signed cooperation agreements with Earth. The pattern was becoming clear. The humans weren't invading randomly. They were moving against species that had already been softened up by their diplomatic missions. Alert all fleet commanders, Vexran ordered. Full defensive positions. And contact our allies. They need to know what's coming. But even as he gave the orders, Kethfer knew it might be too late. The humans had spent months studying their enemies, mapping their weaknesses, and positioning their assets. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity sent their most dangerous predators as diplomats. Meanwhile, in their quarters aboard Station Prime, the human delegation was having their own meeting. Jake Morrison stood at the window, watching Zephyrian ships moving into defensive formations. They know, Lisa Parker said simply. The question is, how much? Enough to be dangerous, Ryan Bell replied. Look at their fleet positioning. There, preparing for siege warfare. Amy Carter smiled coldly. Let them prepare. We've already mapped every weakness in their defenses. Their preparations are based on conventional warfare thinking. Jake turned from the window. Signal Earth Command. Tell them we're moving to Phase 3 ahead of schedule. The Empire has become aware of our activities. Recommendation? Lisa asked. Standard protocol, Jake replied. Offer them one final chance to surrender peacefully. When they refuse, we demonstrate why resistance is futile. The humans activated their encrypted communication system, sending a message that would travel faster than light to Earth. Within hours, human fleets across the galaxy would receive new orders. Back in the Empire's command center, the first reports were coming in from their intelligence network. The news was catastrophic. The Calarian homeworld has fallen, Zalt reported, his voice hollow with shock. No battle, no resistance. They simply surrendered. How is that possible? Vexran demanded. The human fleet arrived and broadcast a message. It contained detailed information about every Calarian military installation, every defensive position, every government official. They knew everything. More reports followed, each one worse than the last. The Nexus Federation had surrendered. After the humans demonstrated their ability to shut down the Federation's entire communication network, the outer colonies had capitulated when human ships appeared simultaneously over every inhabited world. They're not fighting battles, Kethvar realized. They're simply revealing how much they know. The psychological impact is devastating. It's brilliant, General Vex_Mar admitted reluctantly. Why waste resources on military conquest when you can achieve the same result through intimidation and superior intelligence? The display showed the expanding zone of human control. Red markers appeared over star system after star system as species surrendered without firing a shot. We're next, Vexron said quietly. They'll make us the same offer. As if summoned by his words, Jake Morrison appeared on the chamber's communication screen. His expression was calm and professional, but his eyes held the cold certainty of a predator who had cornered his prey. High Counselor Vexron, Jake began. I think it's time we had an honest conversation. About what, Ambassador Morrison? Vexron replied, maintaining the diplomatic pretense. About the fact that you know who we really are, Jake said with a slight smile, and about the choice you now face. The facade was finally dropping. The human was no longer pretending to be a diplomat. What choice? Vexron asked. The same choice we've offered every species in the galaxy, Jake replied. Peaceful integration into the human commonwealth, or the alternative. And what is the alternative? Jake's smile grew colder. You've seen our files, Counselor. You know what we did to the Mars Rebellion, the Europa Separatists, the Ceres Uprising. That was when we were fighting our own species, people who shared our psychology and understood our methods. The implication was clear. If the humans could be that ruthless with their own kind, what would they do to alien species? You have 24 hours to consider our offer, Jake continued. After that, we moved to final protocols. The communication ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Final protocols, Zaelth whispered. What do you think that means? Kethvar didn't need to guess. He had studied the human files, read the reports about their past campaigns. Final protocols meant the gloves came off, and the humans stopped pretending to be civilized. We F,